You're listening to Radio Podcast. 21st Century Entrepreneurship. Speaking with Darko is a journey per se. He is a rare business and psychology expert combination. It seems everything he touched becomes success. Awarded first prize for Best Global Student Framework in Future Studies at University of Houston, London Business School Master of Global Leadership, as well as Master of Studies in Professional Training in Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy at University of Oxford, and list goes on. Approachable, positive, and simple person. Always learning new things associated with you, Darko. Darko, hi. How are you?
Hello, Martin. I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So my name is Darko Lovric. I'm currently based in New York, where I work for a venture advisory firm, where my role is mostly twofold. I tend to try to help large companies to innovate and work with a set of startups and social entrepreneurs, helping them develop their ventures. Earlier in my career, I worked for World Economic Forum, for Deloitte, and for Goldman Sachs. And most of my training is a combination, sometimes fortunate, sometimes not, of psychology and business.
Oh, that sounds like a great combination. So, regarding World Economic Forum, did you meet some famous people from politics, economic background?
Yes, of course. The whole premise of the meeting is an attempt to pull together people who have both, I guess, the insights, the experience, and the position to really make an effective change. So throughout my experiences with the forum, I've met a set of people that I was actually very proud to meet, from political leaders to chief executives, and probably to my favorite, just a variety of experts, from Nobel Prize winners to writers to poets. Those things I found really, really inspiring and life-changing.
So you basically immersed into intellectual abundance.
Well, yes, and partially sometimes it can even be overwhelming, because one tends to then be a bit stuck between the two impressions. One is, it is pretty incredible how many new things and new opportunities are opening up, and what type of world we might be living in, sort of the optimistic side. But at the same time, one gets exposed to so many different problems and challenges, some of which seem really intractable, that this pessimism and optimism tend to hang in a somewhat strange balance, depending on the day, because on one side you see all of the various possible solutions and innovations that might really change our world for the better, and on the other side you see rather clearly how many of those challenges we actually have, and how hard the world is for so many people.
Okay, so that's basically our today's topic, innovation. So why is innovation so important?
I believe that, aside the general fascination with innovation, it has this nice catch-it and people love engaging with the topic. It's partially exactly for the reason of how many challenges we have. And you could argue that there are usually two approaches to global challenges. One is sort of political, community-based, which says, well, we just have to make different choices. And the other is technologically based, which says, well, maybe we'll find new ways to do things so we can avoid those hard choices. Obviously, the latter part is favored by most people. But however, we live in a world in which, while there, I think, at the first blush, there is a lot of innovation, most of that innovation is concentrated within digital technology. And obviously that is changing the world and how you and I currently engage, for example, or the listeners to this podcast. But it tends to currently stay within a narrow field. And when you compare it to the changes we faced in late 19th, early 20th century, those, I believe, in some ways felt much more pervasive across a wide range of areas of human life. So we live in a world where both we feel that there is a lot of innovation and the world is changing rapidly, and a world in which, in some ways, we really don't have enough innovation to really adequately tackle these global challenges.
What's your opinion regarding artificial intelligence?
First, the clue is in the name. We have a lot of what I would probably term rather machine learning. It's going to become an exceptionally important part of our lives. Obviously, again, with some, as many innovations do, there will be both advantages and disadvantages to that, to any innovation. My hunch is that we'll see a lot of advancement in the coming years, especially for systems that we've already seen, systems that are able to learn from massive data sets. And we'll see a similar thing from systems that are able to learn from massive perception-based sets, such as self-driving cars. And I think our current architecture will stop there, and we'll need a couple of fundamental innovations to actually get to systems that we might call intelligent or agent-like. So I guess my perspective is very optimistic in the short run, fairly pessimistic in the medium run, and then who knows, but I might as well be optimistic in the long run. But I believe we are currently entering a bit of an overhyped cycle of what people expect from AI, and we won't be able to deliver it in the next coming few years. But we will very likely be able to deliver it at some point.
Of course. Regarding semantics, it is interesting. The most used word is deep learning, actually. So is there any connection between machine learning and deep learning? Differences?
Well, it's a new field. So a lot of people try to stake a claim by creating a set of concepts or each of these concepts actually come with fairly deep theoretical and academic perspectives. So people use them to validate that perspective, and many other people just use the one that they prefer. But maybe the way I would put it is the following. We currently mostly have AI and machine learning tools being used on massive data sets where you've tried something millions of times, right? And most of the other people have tried it. Rarely are they generated specifically. Mostly they are bought, these data sets. What real intelligence would be is learning on exceptionally small data sets. So as one of the scientists in the field says, if you have a child and the child is running around in the room and it hits a table, it doesn't need to hit the table another million times not to hit it again. It will typically never hit it again and try to avoid it. Currently, we don't have machines that are able to learn like that.
Sure. So, okay, let's go back to human context. Why is innovation difficult?
Yes, the eternal question. Most of my day is probably spent both trying to make innovation easier and realizing how hard it is. My job is less to innovate myself and mostly to build systems and contexts that enable innovation. And I've noticed that there are probably two really important mindsets that really impede innovation. And they're both mindsets that would impede innovation in a large system as well as small system. One is really the focus on efficiency. In many ways, the efficiency is the antithesis of innovation. If everything one does is for a purpose, for a stated goal, and reaching that goal most efficiently, one by default doesn't try something new, doesn't stray, doesn't make mistakes, is not creative. It is essentially machine-like. So most of our organizations, from governments to bureaucracy specifically to large corporations, are really efficiency maximizing machines. And many of us actually treat ourselves or try to as efficiency maximizing machines. But if we look at nature, of course, both evolution on a macro scale as well as learning on an animal scale tend to focus on generating new behavior, creativity, play even, if you will, which is fairly inefficient. Right? There are few things that are as inefficient as play, but that allow variation, that allow new things to be tried, and that eventually allow something new to happen. So unfortunately, I guess we simply don't have enough time to play in our efficient world. That's one challenge. And the other challenge is a real desire for certainty. And this we face very often. So when one tries to create a case for an innovation in a large corporation, one has to make already a pretty ironclad case of what's going to happen and what the innovation is going to be. Similarly, while venture ecosystem tends to be significantly more open to innovation, mostly venture capital decisions are made based on at least some desire for certainty, which is often actually more of an exercise in rationalization and justification than actual certainty. And I think that second mindset makes it very hard for a person to just stand up and say, hey, we actually don't know, but we care about this problem and we're going to try a number of things. We have a lot of skilled people here, and I hope we will find something, which is essentially the attitude of fundamental research, if you will.
Where would you put creativity?
Well, I think, you see, my own perspective is that creativity is a natural state. We educate ourselves out of creativity. And our systems and expectations create conditions in which it's hard for us to be creative, and sometimes we forget to do that. But my hunch is that by removing the obstacles to creativity, the creativity that we all naturally have will start to flow out. So that's probably the main point of my approach, is that I don't necessarily feel that you need to, if you will, pour creativity into the people in order to get innovation. I believe it's already there.
How can our society encourage innovation?
Oh, there are many ways.
Many ways, of course.
And I actually think that we need all of those ways more or less working in concert. So we need schools that actually encourage much more of a play. This is by far not a new concept or a statement. Many people say this in many different ways, but the sad fact remains we are still quite far away from it. We need corporations in which mistakes are not seen as the worst thing, and in which people are allowed to fail. We need more startups. We need more social entrepreneurs. We need governments that are ready to experiment. We need governments that will say, well, we don't know. Let's try a couple of things. I mean, just that is usually a death knell for a politician to come to its voters and say, hey, I actually don't quite know how we're going to solve that, but we're really going to give it a try. There, for example, you can clearly see how much our current society values this pretense of certainty. I believe, acting on all of these things, getting academia out of the ivory tower. Academia is in many ways designed to be a system where people don't really know and where creativity is encouraged. But if you look at our current grant-making system and peer review systems, they're not exactly systems that will encourage creativity. They're mostly systems that encourage not so much conformity, but probably conformity with the research agenda as it is set by the department. So you can play, but stay in the lines. So in some ways, we build these very efficient systems that make us feel good and make us feel that there are experts who know exactly what they're doing. But they're in many ways killing our capacity to innovate as societies.
Last time I spoke with a person from Great Britain, and she told me the government is actually encouraging startups on different ways. What is the situation in USA?
The situation in USA in that case is probably better, because all the government needs to do is get out of their way and startups really start flourishing. And again, probably similar to my previous point, which is if you just give people the freedom, they will try and do it. That said, specifically on Europe versus US distinction, and being a European, I feel it acutely. US does really have a better business culture. I don't want to put too fine of a point on it.
Of course.
Really, the attitude towards failure and experimentation and the openness to new things and new approaches in many ways. My whole job currently of advising ventures is basically an invented job, and I can do it here because people are willing to give it a try. I'm pretty sure it will be a bit harder in Europe, and I think that aspect of mindset needs changing. So it doesn't feel that somehow government needs to encourage startups. Yes, it does, but mostly by getting out of the way and creating conditions in which people can really just easily start their business, export, import. And in some ways, it feels to me that maybe Britain is moving in the opposite direction.
Darko, we are almost out of time. So regarding the last question, what can actually individuals do?
Well, I think both many things and few things. One, when it's faced with a social problem of this magnitude, it's easy to feel powerless. But it's actually quite easy to become a bit more powerful in one's own life. So creating a space for play is definitely one aspect. Creating an outlet for someone to be creative, even if it's just a hobby, is very important. Encouraging your children, your colleagues, your friends to do the same, especially your co-workers. And eventually, getting maybe the entrepreneur bug or the researcher bug, and not thinking about entrepreneurship in too narrow of a term. It doesn't mean starting a very large business. It could be social entrepreneurship. It could be community activism. But this whole idea that life as it is hasn't really been found and set, but it's something that can be created and shaped. And taking that attitude in whatever you do in your daily life is I think both profoundly empowering and satisfying, as well as a really good way to create more innovation.
For our listeners, do you have any advice regarding the mindset? What kind of mindset do you need to start such a journey?
Well, one of the most important things, I guess, is attitude towards mistake. Silicon Valley has a lot of tropes about how to start businesses. Some of them have now, graduated towards the level of a cliche, and that's actually fine because cliche means it's really probably true. But creating conditions to fail early and know that you failed and change track. So basically creating conditions for very good feedback is probably the essential mindset. If we were speaking about machine learning earlier in this talk, and essentially a part of what machines find it really hard is to learn quickly from feedback, right? They need millions of time. So I think doing the same in our own lives, not waiting for something to happen a million times before you do it, but instead creating a condition for very clear, unambiguous feedback, and lo and behold, actually doing something different in the face of it, is really the mindset that creates many other mindsets.
Darko, it was real pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to our next interview.
Thank you so much, Martin. Pleasure speaking with you too.